"Security, get that woman out of here." That's what my son's bride screamed, right before the music stopped and every head in that grand church turned toward me. I didn't flinch. I just held up the cream-colored envelope in my trembling hand and said, "Before you marry him, maybe you should know he's already married." Gasps filled the air. The pastor froze mid-blessing. My son's face went pale. I walked down that aisle, heels clicking on the marble, heart pounding louder than the organ. The letter shook in my grip, the real marriage certificate with my name and his signature. You see, I wasn't there to stop a stranger's wedding. I was there to stop the woman who'd stolen my husband and make every single person who called me crazy old Evelyn choke on their words. So if you're watching this video, please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching my story from, because this one, it's about betrayal, justice, and walking into the fire to end a lie. My name is Evelyn Carter, 62 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Some folks around here still call me Miss Evelyn from Cascade Road, like I'm a memory they can't quite let go of. Most days you'd find me sitting on my front porch, sipping sweet tea from a mason jar, humming a little Mahalia Jackson while the cicadas hum back. That porch has seen it all: laughter, gossip, prayers, and more than its fair share of tears. I wasn't always the kind of woman who had to walk into a church and stop a wedding. No, baby. I used to be the woman who baked sweet potato pies for the church fundraiser, who ran the choir robes through my washing machine every Saturday night so the Lord's house would shine bright Sunday morning. I believed in family, in respect, in keeping your vows before God. And I believed in Samuel Carter, my husband of 38 years. He was a tall, proud man with a preacher's baritone voice and a smile that used to melt me quicker than butter in a skillet. We built a life together, 2 kids, a decent home, a little nest egg, and a reputation for being that couple who had made it. Or so it seemed. Our eldest, Marcus, was my pride. Sharp boy. Always had his daddy's charm and my determination. He married young, his college sweetheart Denise, and gave me 2 grandbabies who were the light of my world. Our daughter Chanel was different. A dreamer, a hairstylist with hands blessed by God and a temper that could cut like shears when she felt betrayed. She'd always been closer to her father than me, but I didn't mind. I figured that's how daughters sometimes are. For years, our life moved like a gospel song, steady rhythm, strong faith, familiar notes. Until the music stopped. It began with whispers. Samuel started working late. The man hadn't brought work home in 38 years, but now he had meetings, conferences, weekend trips. He'd come home smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine, floral, too young, too sweet. When I asked, he laughed. "Evelyn, baby, you always so suspicious. Ain't nobody but me and Jesus at them meetings. But even Jesus don't lie, and my gut told me something was foul." I found strange receipts tucked in his jacket, fine dining and Buckhead hotel reservations under another name. Once I saw a photo in his phone. A woman half my age, maybe younger. Her smile was wide, her nails bright red, her hand on his chest like she'd claimed him. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, the moonlight spilling over the carpet, and whispered, "Lord, if this is a test, I need strength, because I'm about to fail it with my hands." But instead of confrontation, I chose silence. I started praying harder, cooking less, talking softer. When he'd ask what was wrong, I'd smile and say, "Oh, just tired." Inside, I was gathering evidence. Quiet women are the most dangerous kind. Weeks turned into months, and one Sunday after service, I noticed something strange. Samuel wasn't wearing his wedding ring. When I asked why, he said, "I left it at the gym." Funny thing was, Samuel hadn't seen the inside of a gym since Reagan was president. Then one day, Chanel came by with her phone in her hand, shaking. "Ma," she said, "you ain't gonna like this." She turned the screen toward me, and there it was. A Facebook post. Samuel Carter, tagged in a picture at a fancy restaurant, sitting beside a woman with long curls, her hand resting on his. The caption read, "Can't wait to say I do to my forever." At first, I thought maybe it was a prank. But when I clicked her profile, there it was again. Save the date, October 7th, the Carter-Henderson wedding. I dropped my tea glass. It shattered across the floor like my heart. My husband, my partner, the man I'd shared half my life with, was marrying another woman. And the worst part? The marriage license number listed in the photo caption was one I recognized, ours. He'd never filed for divorce. I felt sick. I couldn't breathe. I sat on that kitchen floor for hours, my knees stiff, my soul shaking. By midnight, I'd made up my mind. If he wanted to play house with a younger woman, fine. But he wasn't about to erase me like I never existed. Over the next few weeks, I dug through every drawer, every old folder, every dusty box in the attic. I found our original marriage certificate, signed and notarized, the real thing. I tucked it into a cream-colored envelope and slid it inside my Bible between Psalms and Proverbs. Because when Judgment Day came, earthly or divine, I wanted to be ready. The next morning, my best friend, Miss Laverne, came by. She's the kind of woman who never shows up empty-handed or uninvited gossip. When I told her what happened, she put her hand on mine and said, "Evelyn, sometimes God lets the devil dance just so he can trip him in front of everybody." I smiled. Then I guess I'm about to see the Lord do some choreography. For 2 months, I stayed quiet. I watched Samuel pack suitcases, heard him whisper on the phone, saw him strut around like a man who'd found new life. But I also noticed the cracks, bills unpaid, mail piling up, whispers from neighbors who saw too much. They pitied me, thinking I didn't know. But baby, I knew everything. Then came the invitation. It arrived in my mailbox like a slap from heaven, gold lettering, white ribbon, elegant script. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Samuel Carter and Miss Tasha Henderson." My husband had the audacity to send me an invitation to his own bigamy. That's when the rage turned into resolve. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I ironed my dress, pressed my hair, and polished the same gold earrings Samuel had given me on our 10th anniversary. The ones he said made me look like a queen. If he wanted a show, I'd give him one. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't kill you quick. It kills you slow, like a splinter under the skin. You think you can ignore it, but it festers until it demands attention. After that wedding invitation came, I started noticing how the world moved around me differently. The church ladies whispered a little too soft when I walked by. At the grocery store, Miss Tanya from the choir offered me a hug out of nowhere, like she already knew the gossip. Everybody knew before I did, everybody but me. That kind of humiliation doesn't just sting, it burns. Still, I played my part. I went to choir practice. I baked pies for the fall festival. I smiled at people who pitied me. But every night, when the house got quiet and the lights dimmed, I pulled out that marriage certificate and stared at it like it was scripture. My proof. My weapon. My truth. Samuel didn't live with me anymore. He'd moved out to clear his head, as he said. But his clothes were still in our closet, his name still on the deed, and his toothbrush still on my bathroom counter. He never took them, because in his mind he still owned everything. Including me. One Thursday afternoon, while I was sweeping the porch, a white Lexus pulled into the driveway. Out stepped a woman in a red jumpsuit, heels too high for decency and confidence too loud for wisdom. She strutted up my walkway like she owned it. "Hi," she said, her voice sugary sweet but sharp underneath. "You must be Evelyn." "I am," I replied, leaning on my broom. "And you must be lost," she laughed, tilting her head. "No, not lost. I just came to talk, woman to woman, about Samuel." I froze, but I didn't show it. She continued, "He told me you're separated, that the marriage has been dead for years. I just thought it was time you heard it from me, out of respect." Her words sliced through me like glass. I smiled anyway. "Respect," I said softly. "That's an interesting word to use while you're standing on another woman's porch wearing her husband's cologne." Her lips tightened. "Well, soon he'll be my husband." I chuckled. Oh, sweetheart, you better pray on that. She turned to leave, her heels clicking fast now. But before she reached the car, I called out, "You tell Samuel I said congratulations, and tell him to keep an eye on his mail." That night, I called my niece Kendra, who worked down at the county clerk's office. "Kendra, baby," I said, "can you pull me a copy of any marriage license filed under Samuel Carter?" When she saw it the next morning, she called me back, whispering, "Auntie, you won't believe this. They filed one last week. But the system rejected it. It says, duplicate spouse on record." I smiled slow. "That's right," I said, "because the first one's still living." The next Sunday, I went to church early. I needed to sit in the Lord's house before I did something that might test my salvation. When Pastor Reed saw me in the front pew, he smiled. "Good to see you, Sister Evelyn. Been a minute." I nodded. "Yes, Pastor, I'm just here to pray for strength." He said, "The Lord gives it freely." I whispered, "Then he better give me a double portion." I prayed hard that day. Not for forgiveness, not yet, but for precision. Because when I moved, I wanted every word, every step, every gesture to land like thunder. Over the next few weeks, I gathered what I needed: our original marriage license with the notary stamp, the house deed showing both our names, old photos, anniversaries, vacations, our children's weddings, bank statements still under Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Carter. Each paper was another nail in the coffin of his lies. Meanwhile, rumors spread. Someone told me Samuel was flaunting his new fiancée all over town, taking her to church socials, introducing her to his old friends as my future wife. The audacity of that man could have powered the whole city grid. Miss Laverne, my partner in righteous mischief, came over with her tea and sharp tongue. "You gonna let him walk down that aisle like nothing happened?" she asked. I looked at her, slow and steady. "No, sugar, I'm gonna let him get almost to the altar." She grinned wide. "Lord have mercy, I'm bringing popcorn." A few days before the wedding, I got a call from my daughter, Chanel. "Ma," she said, "you sure about this?" "People gonna talk." I sighed. "They already talking, baby. The least I can do is give them something worth talking about." She laughed softly. "You sound like Grandma used to." I smiled. "That's because your grandma didn't raise no fool." On the eve of the wedding, I took out the cream-colored envelope, pressed it flat with my hands, and slipped it into my handbag. I stood before the mirror, staring at my reflection, silver hair pinned high, pearls at my neck, grace in my posture. I whispered to myself, "You are not broken. You are the storm." The next morning dawned bright and cruelly beautiful. The sky was blue, the birds loud, and the devil busy. I dressed in a navy suit, elegant, respectful, unassuming. I didn't want drama, I wanted justice. When I arrived at New Hope Baptist Church, it looked like a movie set. White flowers everywhere, champagne ribbons on pews, gospel music playing softly. Samuel stood near the altar in a brand new tuxedo, looking every bit the proud groom. And there she was, Tasha Henderson, radiant, young, wearing a white gown that probably cost more than my first house. People whispered when they saw me enter, some turned their faces. Others stared, mouths open. I didn't mind. Let them watch. I took a seat in the last pew, clutching my purse. As the ceremony began, my hands trembled, not from fear but from years of swallowed anger rising to the surface, when the pastor said, "If anyone here has reason these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." I stood up. My voice rang through that church like thunder rolling off the hills. "I have something to say." Gasps filled the air. The music stopped. Samuel's eyes went wide. "Evelyn, sit down," he hissed. But I didn't sit. I walked down that aisle, slow and steady, each step echoing with 38 years of lies and love. When I reached the front, I pulled out the envelope and held it up. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said, "just to remind this man, and everyone here, that he's already married. To me." I opened the envelope and revealed the document, the real marriage certificate, yellowed with age, signed in ink that hadn't faded. The church fell silent. The pastor's mouth dropped open. "Lord, have mercy." Tasha turned to Samuel, her face drained of color. "What is she talking about?" Samuel stuttered. "Baby, she's confused," I cut him off. "Confused? Then maybe the county clerk, the notary, and 38 years of our life are confused too." Then I turned to the pastor. "Reverend, unless the state of Georgia changed its laws overnight, bigamy's still a sin and a crime." The room erupted. The church was silent for a moment, so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every eye was on me, the elderly woman Samuel had spent years dismissing. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady, calm, unlike the frantic drumming in Samuel's chest. Tasha's lips trembled. I don't understand," she whispered, her hand reaching for Samuel's arm. "Understand?" I echoed, my voice low but cutting. "You're about to marry a man who's been married to me for 38 years. You're marrying a liar and a cheater, and you didn't even bother to check the truth." I glanced around the congregation, friends, family, strangers. Everyone was leaning forward, waiting. Some had shock in their eyes, some disbelief, some pity. That pity, that look, fueled me. It told me they finally understood that all those years of quiet endurance were not weakness. They were preparation. Samuel's face was red, veins bulging in his neck. "Evelyn, please," he growled, trying to sound authoritative. "You can't do this here. Stop humiliating me." I raised my eyebrows. "Humiliate you? Honey, you already did that to me. I'm just returning the favor, publicly." From the pew behind me, I felt a hand squeeze mine. It was Chanel, my daughter. "You got this, Ma," she whispered. Her eyes glistened with tears. Even Marcus, my son, who had always tried to stay neutral, was shifting uncomfortably, avoiding his fiancée's gaze, trying not to take sides. I could feel the tension coiling tighter around Samuel. He started fumbling with his phone, whispering frantic words to Tasha, but she didn't need him. She had already realized the truth, her eyes wide with shock and panic. Then came Mrs. Henderson, Tasha's mother, a woman with a glossy bob and a look that said she thought she had the world on a silver platter. She stormed down the aisle, hand on her hip. "This is outrageous. How dare you show up here, woman? This is my daughter's wedding." I didn't flinch. I simply held the envelope higher. "Actually, ma'am, this is our family's truth." "Your daughter's about to marry a criminal," the congregation murmured. Some gasped louder. A few whispered, "I knew it, I knew it." I could see the cameras in people's phones flashing, ready to capture every moment for posterity. This was no longer just my fight. The crowd had already sided with the truth. The pastor cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Evelyn, perhaps we should." "No, Reverend," I interrupted. "Perhaps he should explain himself." Samuel stumbled forward. I can explain." But his voice was drowned out by whispers, gasps, and a few pointed fingers. I knew exactly how to escalate it. "Reverend, if you don't mind," I said, opening the envelope and holding the document above my head for all to see. "Here is the official marriage certificate, signed, notarized, filed with the state. It proves that I am still legally his wife. Every other action he's taken, including attempting to marry another woman, is null and void." The church erupted. Shock turned to murmurs, murmurs to whispers of anger, disbelief, sympathy. Eyes turned to Samuel. He was sweating, shaking, trying to think fast. But fast didn't work when the truth hit like a freight train. A hush fell when Pastor Reed stepped closer. He looked from me to Samuel and back again, then said slowly, "Samuel, do you have anything to say about this?" He opened his mouth, stammered, swallowed, and then muttered, It's complicated." I laughed softly, not meanly, but sharply. "Complicated? Samuel, you had one job. Honor your vows." "One. And now look where we are. You're standing in front of the entire congregation like a man caught in his own web." I let the silence stretch for a few seconds, let the weight of those words sink in. And then I stepped aside, letting Tasha's mother and daughter see the truth for themselves. She could no longer blame me. She could no longer pretend she didn't know. From the back pew, I saw neighbors I'd helped over the years, older women who'd once whispered, "Evelyn, you're too kind, too quiet." Now they were nodding, some even murmuring prayers under their breath. I felt a surge of calm. This wasn't about vengeance alone. It was about justice, and the crowd could see it. I pulled a deep breath, turning my gaze toward my son, Marcus. "Mama's got this," he whispered. "Yes, baby," I said, "but sometimes you gotta let the world witness it too." Samuel, realizing no one was going to rally to his side, tried one last desperate move. He lunged toward me, hands raised, like he might snatch the certificate, but everyone held him back. Tasha stepped back, terrified. It was then the whispers changed, from shock to awe. Even the pastor looked at me like he had never truly seen me before. "You're remarkable," he said quietly, shaking his head. And I realized, remarkable doesn't mean loud or flashy. It means having the courage to stand, calm and poised, while the world trembles around you. The air in the church was thick, heavy with whispers, disbelief, and the faint scent of expensive perfume. Everyone's eyes were glued to Samuel, who was sweating like a sinner in the pews. Tasha's hand trembled in her mother's grip, and a few of the older ladies looked like they might faint. I stood there, calm, poised, holding that cream-colored envelope like it was Excalibur. But the real twist, the part that made even me catch my breath for a second, was what I found tucked beneath the certificate. Inside that envelope, along with our original marriage certificate, was a second document. It wasn't something Samuel had forgotten. Oh no, it was something he had tried to hide for decades. A deed. To the house we built together, the house we raised our children in, the house he had proudly told everyone was ours. But Samuel had secretly transferred ownership to Tasha Henderson. My hand shook for a moment as I pulled it out. The signature was unmistakable, his. And the notary stamp confirmed it was official. I looked up at the crowd, their eyes asking silently, "What now, Evelyn?" I took a deep breath, my voice steady, measured. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "it seems there's more to this story than just a second wedding. This man has been plotting behind my back for months, trying to erase my life, my home, my family, all to start a new one with a woman half my age." Gasps echoed through the church. I could see Tasha's jaw drop. You can't," she shouted, pointing at Samuel. "I can," I said softly, "and I will." The pastor stepped closer, clearly torn between maintaining decorum and acknowledging the truth. "Evelyn, what is this?" I held up the deed. "This, Reverend, is proof that while I was quietly living, praying, and raising his children, Samuel thought he could steal my home and my dignity. But God has other plans." Samuel's face went pale, his hands flew to his head. "Evelyn, it's not what it looks like." "Oh, honey," I said, smiling coldly, "it looks exactly how it feels. Betrayal tastes like dust, and you've been swallowing it for years while pretending to dine at my table." At that moment, Chanel stepped forward. "Ma, you don't have to do this alone," she said, holding my hand. Marcus moved beside me as well, eyes blazing with quiet fury. "We're with you, Mom." Even the congregation, stunned as they were, began murmuring agreement. I could see neighbors who had once whispered behind my back nodding. The power had shifted, from the man who thought he could get away with it to the woman he had underestimated. But the biggest shock came when Tasha Henderson, the fiancée, turned to me, eyes wide, voice trembling. I didn't know," she said, almost pleading. "Didn't know?" I echoed, voice low, lethal. "Honey, you chose to ignore the signs, to ignore the truth, and to trust a man who's been lying since the day you met him." Samuel tried to speak, but his words faltered. He glanced around, seeing the church now clearly on my side. I smiled, not cruelly, not in triumph, but in pure, unshakable authority. You thought you could rewrite my story, I said, but you can't. You see, I don't just live. I endure. I observe. I prepare, and when the time is right, I strike. He went pale, and Tasha clutched her mother's arm. Then came the subtle twist no one expected, including me. The church doors burst open, and Detective Harris, a neighbor and old family friend who knew every corner of Samuel's schemes, walked in. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Reverend," he said, holding a folder, "but we've been investigating fraudulent property transfers, and Samuel Carter is under review for potential criminal activity." The murmurs turned to whispers of shock, then gasps. Tasha looked like she had seen a ghost. Samuel's lips moved, but nothing came out. I raised my hand, gently pressing the papers toward the detective. "These documents," I said, "prove everything. The marriage, the house, his lies. And now, it's all in the hands of someone who can hold him accountable." The crowd's whispers shifted to admiration. Evelyn Carter, once quiet, underestimated, dismissed, had turned the church into a courtroom, a stage, and a tribunal all at once. I glanced at my daughter, my son, and my friends. The satisfaction wasn't about cruelty. It was about justice served. And everyone in that church, even Tasha, now realized who the real power was. The pastor stepped forward, voice trembling. "Evelyn, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing, Reverend," I replied. "Let the truth speak." And for the first time in decades, I felt fully seen. Not just as a wife, not just as a mother, not just as a neighbor, but as the woman who refuses to be erased. The whispers of shock were followed by quiet awe. Everyone in that room would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. And I wasn't done yet. The air was electric, thick with whispers and the hum of anticipation. I could feel the weight of every eye in the church, all waiting for Samuel's next move. And, truthfully, so was I. I stepped closer to the altar, heels clicking softly against the polished floor, and let my gaze sweep over the congregation. Neighbors, family friends, church elders, they were all witnesses to the moment Samuel had tried to erase me from. Now, they were witnesses to his unraveling. I reached into my purse and pulled out the final piece of evidence, a stack of photographs. Not just casual snapshots, these were proof of every lie Samuel had told, receipts, hotel check-ins, his meetings with Tasha under false pretenses. Every deception meticulously documented. "Everyone here deserves the truth," I said, voice clear and steady. Samuel's face went pale. He opened his mouth, stammering, "Evelyn, please, this isn't necessary." I shook my head. "Necessary? Samuel, this is overdue. For 38 years, I've been patient, quiet, kind. I've let your lies slide and your betrayal fester. But today, the truth has a voice. And that voice is me." I handed the photographs to Detective Harris. "Detective, please, verify these for the congregation." He nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am, these are authentic. Every transaction, every meeting, every attempt to hide your actions is documented." The murmur of shock rippled through the church like a wave. Tasha clutched her mother's arm. Her eyes darted between Samuel and me, panic rising. "Samuel," I said, taking a deep breath, "you told Tasha I was separated. You told her I was out of the picture. You told everyone I was irrelevant." He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean?" I echoed, stepping closer. "You meant to steal my home, my family, my dignity. And now, in front of everyone, you're being called out. How does that feel?" For a moment, the church was silent. Then came the first gasp from the crowd, then a whisper. Then full-blown outrage. I glanced at Tasha. She looked horrified, betrayed, humiliated. "I didn't know," she repeated. "Yes, you did," I said softly, "but ignorance doesn't excuse participation. You should have asked. You should have cared." Instead, you let yourself be part of a lie." Samuel's face turned a deep crimson. "Evelyn, don't do this here. We can fix this." "Fix this?" I laughed, low and sharp. "Honey, nothing to fix. The law is on my side, the church sees the truth, and this congregation knows what kind of man you are." "Fix it?" "No, today, justice is served." Detective Harris spoke up. "Samuel Carter, due to falsifying documents and attempting unlawful property transfer, legal proceedings are underway. You will need to answer for your actions." The church erupted. Whispers of disbelief, gasps, and admiration for me filled the air. I turned slowly, letting the moment settle, letting the power of truth hang like a weight on Samuel's shoulders. Then, the final reveal, the ultimate twist. I reached into my purse one last time and pulled out the original house deed, stamped and notarized. "This house," I said, holding it high, "belongs to me. Samuel Carter, your attempts to transfer ownership to Tasha Henderson are invalid. This is proof, and now the world knows, the law knows. And the people know." Gasps filled the air. Tasha's mother cried out, "This is impossible." I smiled gently, not cruelly. "Impossible? Only if you believed lies over truth." I could see Samuel's hands shake, his composure crumbling. Even the pastor's face betrayed his astonishment. He muttered, I can't believe it." I turned to the congregation. "Ladies and gentlemen, for years I've been called quiet, old, patient. But patience is not weakness. I endured because I knew that when the time came, the truth would shine brighter than any lie." At that moment, Samuel's lawyer, a thin, nervous man, whispered frantically into his ear. "You're done, sir. There's no way out of this." I could feel the adrenaline, the righteous power coursing through me. I looked down at Marcus and Chanel, their eyes filled with pride and love. I had taught them well, strength isn't loud. Strength is knowing your worth and standing up when it matters most. Samuel turned to Tasha, desperation written all over his face. "This isn't real," he said. "Oh, honey," I replied, soft but lethal. "Real is the life you tried to destroy. Real is the family you lied to. Real is the woman standing in front of you, unbroken, unashamed, unstoppable." At that moment, cameras flashed. Phones recorded. Witnesses gasped. The wedding was over before it even started. Pastor Reed stepped forward, voice trembling. "Evelyn, you've stopped a wedding and delivered justice in one breath. I am speechless." I nodded. "Reverend, sometimes the truth has to be loud, and today it had to be seen." Samuel's face was ashen. Tasha Henderson looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And the congregation? They were no longer silent spectators. They were participants in a story of betrayal, courage, and justice, a story that would be told in that church for years to come. I breathed in, steady and calm. Finally, the storm had reached its peak. And at the center of it all stood me, Evelyn Carter, still dignified, still commanding, and finally, fully in control. The church felt electric, every pew, every aisle charged with anticipation. People leaned forward, some mouths agape, some whispering, some shaking their heads in disbelief. I had never felt more alive. Samuel Carter, my husband, the man who had tried to erase me, now stood frozen at the altar. His new fiancée, Tasha Henderson, looked like she had seen a ghost. The congregation was no longer spectators. They were witnesses to the collapse of deception. I stepped closer to the altar, heels clicking against the marble floor, the cream-colored envelope clutched in my hand. I opened it once more, letting the contents spill like a revelation for everyone to see. Original marriage certificate, house deed, and the photographs of every secret transaction and meeting Samuel had tried to hide. "You wanted a wedding," I said, voice calm but piercing, "but what you got instead is accountability." Gasps echoed. Tasha's mother, Mrs. Henderson, turned to me, her glossy bob trembling with outrage. "You can't do this," she screamed. "This is my daughter's special day." I smiled, soft but deadly. It was her special day, but it's no longer about weddings. It's about truth, justice, and consequences. The congregation murmured in agreement. Some nodded, some gasped, some whispered. Finally, someone stood up for her. I stepped closer to Samuel. 38 years, Samuel. 38 years of patience, of respect, of partnership. And you? You traded all of that for a lie, a thrill, a young woman who didn't even ask the right questions. He tried to speak, but his words faltered, his hands trembled. "Evelyn, it's not like that," he whispered. "Oh, it is like that," I replied. And now everyone knows. Detective Harris stepped forward, his presence calm but commanding. "Samuel Carter, due to falsifying property documents and attempting to commit fraud, you are required to appear before the court. Any further attempts to conceal or manipulate facts will carry legal consequences." Samuel's jaw dropped. He looked like a man about to vanish into thin air. "Detective, wait, it's a misunderstanding," he said. "No, sir," Harris replied, his voice firm. "Everything has been verified. The documents, the signatures, the transfers. Your actions are fully documented." I let the weight of that silence sink in. The hush of shock, the whispers of awe, the collective awareness that the mighty have fallen. Even Pastor Reed, a man I'd admired for decades, shook his head in astonishment. "I've never witnessed anything like this," he murmured. I turned to the congregation, letting my eyes sweep across every face. "Ladies and gentlemen, truth doesn't need defenders," I said, "but sometimes it needs witnesses. Today you've seen what patience, courage, and righteous indignation can do." Then came the quietest, most powerful moment. Marcus and Chanel stepped forward. My son, tall and steady, took my hand. "Mama," he whispered, "you did it. You made them see. You made them understand." "Yes, baby," I said, squeezing his hand, "but this isn't just about me. It's about every woman who was ever underestimated, dismissed, or ignored." Samuel's face was ashen. Tasha Henderson's hands trembled, her once proud posture crumbling. Mrs. Henderson's mouth moved, but no sound came out. I raised the original deed high. This house, this life, this family, all that Samuel tried to steal, belongs to me. And everyone here knows it now. Someone in the congregation gasped audibly. "Evelyn Carter," whispered an older lady from the back pew, "you are something else." I smiled faintly. "Something else? I'm just a woman who refused to be erased." Then Samuel, in a last-ditch attempt at control, moved toward me. "I can fix this. I can pay you back." "I can." "Stop," I said, my voice steady and absolute. "No more words. You had your chance. You chose lies. You chose deceit. And now you will face the consequences, publicly, legally, and morally." The congregation murmured in agreement. Even Tasha, tears streaking her makeup, looked at Samuel with a mix of shock and betrayal. "You lied to me," she whispered. He had no answer. Pastor Reed cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Evelyn, your courage has prevented a marriage built on lies. Samuel Carter, your actions are clear and inexcusable. I urge you both to seek reconciliation with truth, not deception." I felt a wave of satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from justice. Samuel's panic was audible, his shoulders slumped. Tasha's mother grabbed her daughter and whispered frantic words I couldn't hear. I took a step back, letting the moment breathe. The church was no longer Samuel's stage, it was mine. I glanced at Marcus and Chanel again. "This is how we stand," I said softly. "With dignity, courage, and truth as our allies." Then I took the envelope, placed it on the altar, and let it rest. It symbolized more than papers. It symbolized decades of endurance, love, and patience rewarded. A few people snapped photos discreetly, phones recorded. The congregation whispered words of admiration and awe. I could feel it, This moment would be remembered for years. Samuel slumped in defeat, Tasha sobbed quietly, and Mrs. Henderson shook her head in disbelief. And through it all, I remained composed, steady, unshaken, victorious. The first part of justice had been served, the wedding stopped, the lies exposed, and Samuel cornered in front of every witness. But there was still more to come. Because justice, in its fullest form, doesn't just humiliate, it restores dignity. It ensures that those who betray, cheat, and lie are held accountable in every arena they tried to control. I straightened my posture, adjusting my navy blazer. "You've all seen it," I said quietly, letting the words hang like a challenge in the air. "A lifetime of lies ends today." But this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of accountability. Even Samuel knew it. Even Tasha knew it. Even the congregation knew it. And in that moment, I realized something. The power I had quietly nurtured for decades, patience, endurance, wisdom, had finally erupted into justice that no one could deny. The tension in the church had reached a fever pitch. Every whisper, every cough, every shuffle of a shoe echoed like thunder. Samuel Carter stood frozen at the altar, his shoulders slumped, his face drained of color. The congregation's eyes were glued to him, and I could feel their collective anticipation like a tangible force pressing down. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch, letting every soul in that church know that I was in control. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, voice calm but resonant, "you've already witnessed the truth about Samuel Carter's attempts to erase me, to steal my home, my family, my dignity. But there's more. There's always more when deception is involved." A few people gasped. Tasha's mother covered her mouth with her hand. Tasha herself shrank back, eyes wide and trembling. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small stack of envelopes, each labeled meticulously: bank statements, emails, photographs, receipts, legal notices. "These documents," I said, holding them high, "show not only attempts to hide assets, but also evidence of manipulation, threats, and lies spanning years. Every lie he told has a footprint. Every deceit leaves a trail. And today, we're following that trail." Samuel's lips quivered. "Evelyn, please, don't." I shook my head. "No, Samuel, not today. Not now. Today, the truth speaks louder than any plea you can muster." Detective Harris stepped closer, confirming each document in front of the congregation. "All verified, all authentic. Fraud, deception, and falsification, all recorded and ready for legal proceedings." The crowd erupted into whispers and exclamations. Some clutched each other's arms. Others shook their heads in disbelief. I turned to the congregation and let my gaze sweep across every face. "Everyone here now knows who Samuel Carter truly is," I said. "No lies. No excuses. No manipulations. Just the truth." Samuel's attempts to defend himself collapsed further. I didn't," he stammered, voice cracking. "It's not what it looks like. It is what it looks like," I replied, calm and commanding. "Every deceit, every lie, every betrayal you committed is here for everyone to see. And now, justice isn't just coming, it's already arrived." Tasha's hands trembled, tears streaming down her face. "You lied to me," she whispered. "Yes, she finally gets it," I said quietly, letting the words hang. "And now, she knows exactly who she trusted." Even the pastor looked stunned. "Evelyn, you've taken control of what could have been chaos and turned it into truth, into justice. I don't know what to say." I smiled faintly. "Say nothing, Reverend. Let the truth speak." From the back pew, neighbors who had once whispered doubts now nodded in agreement, murmuring words of admiration. "You stood tall," said Mrs. Jenkins, clutching her hat. "You didn't flinch. You showed 'em who's boss." I glanced at Marcus and Chanel. My children's faces shone with pride and relief. "You raised me right, Mama," Marcus whispered. "Yes, baby," I replied. "But today I'm just showing the world what patience, courage, and wisdom can accomplish." The hush of anticipation settled again as I reached for one final revelation, a recorded conversation between Samuel and a co-conspirator planning the property transfer behind my back. I pressed play, letting the audio fill the church. Samuel's own voice echoed, detailing the scheme, admitting intent, and exposing every attempt at manipulation. Tasha's mouth dropped open. Samuel froze. The congregation murmured in shock, eyes widening. I walked toward the altar, handing the phone to Detective Harris. "Detective, make sure everyone hears this clearly." Harris nodded, adjusting the volume. The words, the lies, the confessions, all crystal clear, all undeniable. Samuel stumbled backward, hands over his face. Tasha clutched her mother, trembling, realization dawning on her fully. Even the pastor looked stricken. I turned to the congregation, letting the moment resonate. "This is what happens when you think a woman's patience is weakness," I said softly. "It isn't weakness. It's strategy, and when the time comes, justice is unstoppable." Samuel's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. You can't stop her. We'll fight this in court." I shook my head. "No need. The world already knows the truth. And in this house, this church, this community, lies don't last forever." The murmurs of the congregation turned into applause. Some clapped softly. Others cheered quietly. But the message was clear. Evelyn Carter had won this round. Samuel's panic was visible. Tasha's shame was visible. And for the first time in decades, I felt fully vindicated. I took a deep breath and straightened my navy blazer. "This isn't just about stopping a wedding," I said. "It's about reclaiming dignity. About showing the next generation, my children, my grandchildren, and everyone here, that respect, truth, and justice matter more than deceit and greed." At that moment, I realized something profound. Victory isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, meticulous, and undeniable. And today, my victory echoed louder than any wedding bells ever could. The church remained in awe, witnesses to a story of betrayal exposed, a wedding halted, and justice served. Samuel's humiliation was complete, and yet this was only part of the climax. Because true justice doesn't stop at exposure, it demands resolution. And that resolution would come in the final confrontation, where every lie Samuel told would unravel completely, and Evelyn would restore her full dignity in front of everyone who doubted her. The church was a storm of whispers and quiet gasps. Samuel Carter, my husband, the man who thought he could erase me, was crumbling in front of everyone. Tasha Henderson clung to her mother, sobbing softly, realizing fully the magnitude of the deceit she had stepped into. I stepped forward, holding the original documents in one hand and the envelope with the marriage certificate in the other. "This is the moment, Samuel," I said, voice steady, every word precise. "The moment when the lies you've built your life on come crashing down around you." Samuel tried to retreat, stepping backward, his eyes darting to the doors as if escape were possible. You can't do this here. Everyone will see," he sputtered. I smiled faintly, the smile of someone who knows victory is certain. "I don't need anyone's permission," I said. "I've waited years for this moment, Samuel. You've humiliated me, tried to steal my home, lied to my family, and today your reckoning is public, undeniable, and complete." Detective Harris moved beside me, nodding. "All documents verified. All fraudulent transfers are null and void. Legal proceedings will follow, and Mr. Carter will face full accountability." Samuel's face turned red, then pale, then ashen. His lawyer whispered something in his ear, but the words had no effect. The community already knew. The congregation already saw. No one could save him now. I opened the envelope containing the marriage certificate and waved it before the congregation. "This," I said, voice clear, "is the legal truth. Samuel Carter is still my husband, legally and morally. Any attempt to bypass this fact is null." And now everyone here knows the truth, including Tasha Henderson, who deserves the honesty she never got. Tasha's mother gasped, clutching her pearls. You married a man with a wife?" she cried. "Yes," I said softly. "And now the world sees it too." I turned my gaze toward Samuel, locking eyes with him. "You've spent decades thinking you could manipulate, deceive, and erase me," I said, voice firm, resonant. "But what you didn't account for was endurance, patience, and righteous strength. And that is exactly what has stopped you here today." Samuel tried to speak, but his words were weak, broken by shame. You don't understand," he whispered. "I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand betrayal. I understand lies. I understand deception, and I understand that justice delayed is still justice." I walked slowly down the aisle, letting every step echo in the church. Each step was deliberate proof of the power I had cultivated over decades. The congregation watched silently, some mouths open in awe, some heads nodding in approval. Then came the final evidence, the one Samuel thought he had hidden best. I reached into my purse and pulled out a recorded voicemail, a message Samuel had left on my phone last year, admitting to the scheme, planning, and deceit. I played it, letting his own voice accuse and incriminate himself in front of everyone. The reaction was instantaneous. Tasha gasped. Her mother shrieked. Samuel staggered backward, hands over his face. Even Pastor Reed looked stunned. I allowed the silence to stretch for a moment, letting the gravity of the exposure sink in. "You see," I said calmly, "this is what happens when lies are hidden in plain sight. Eventually, the truth finds its way, and when it does, it humbles those who think they are untouchable." Samuel's lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. "No one can help you now," I said softly, more to Samuel than to anyone else. "Not the lawyer. Not your fiancé. Not your excuses. Only the truth can follow you now, and the truth is here." I stepped closer to the altar, placing the marriage certificate and house deed on the lectern. "These aren't just papers," I said. "They are the culmination of patience, strength, and endurance. They represent the life you tried to steal from me. And now they represent justice, publicly, undeniably, completely." Tears streamed down Tasha's cheeks. I can't believe this," she whispered. "You should have asked questions," I replied softly. "You should have known." But ignorance cannot absolve participation in deception. The congregation murmured in agreement. Neighbors whispered words of admiration. Even Pastor Reed shook his head, muttering, "Incredible, simply incredible." I turned fully to Samuel, my voice cutting like a knife. "This is your final lesson. Honesty matters. Respect matters. Justice matters. And the woman you underestimated, well, she endures. She survives. And she triumphs." Samuel fell to his knees, utterly defeated. Tasha's mother tried to intervene, but it was clear the humiliation was complete and public. Samuel's reign of lies had crumbled in front of every witness he had ever thought would protect him. I took a deep breath, letting the moment resonate. "You have been exposed, Samuel Carter," I said. "And this community, your family, and I will not forget. Let this be a lesson. Lies may last for a moment, but truth lasts a lifetime." Chanel and Marcus stepped forward, surrounding me, offering quiet support. "You did it, Mama," Marcus whispered. "Yes, baby," I replied. "We did it. Justice is served. And dignity restored." The church was still filled with the weight of what had just occurred, but slowly, applause began. Soft at first, then louder. People were standing, some cheering quietly, others nodding in respect. The message was clear. Evelyn Carter, once underestimated, had restored her dignity, reclaimed her home, and delivered justice to those who had betrayed her. Samuel remained kneeling, utterly defeated, completely humiliated in public view. Tasha and her mother turned and walked out, shame etched across their faces, and I, Evelyn Carter, remained at the altar, steady, calm, victorious. For the first time in decades, I felt complete peace. The storm had passed. The lies were exposed. Justice had been served. And my family, my dignity, my home, all were intact, all respected, all honored. The morning after the church confrontation, the sunlight felt different, warmer, softer, like it was recognizing the truth had finally been served. I sat on my front porch, rocking gently in the old wooden chair that had seen decades of life, prayer, and love. The morning breeze carried the familiar smell of honeysuckle from the neighbor's garden, mingling with the aroma of coffee brewing inside. Marcus came out carrying 2 mugs. "Ma, coffee," he said, setting one in my hand. I smiled, feeling the quiet joy of routine. "Thank you, baby." Chanel joined us, still in her Sunday dress, hair a little mussed from the previous day's tension. "Mama, you're amazing," she said, eyes shining. I reached over, squeezing her hand. "Child, I did what any mother and woman of dignity would do, but it feels good to finally breathe." Inside, the house felt peaceful again. The living room, once shadowed by Samuel's secrets, now held laughter as the grandchildren ran past, chasing each other through the hall. The kitchen smelled of biscuits and collard greens, a simple reminder that life, no matter how complicated, goes on. I took a deep breath and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood. Neighbors waved as they passed by. Some offered congratulations, others just nodded in respect. Even Mrs. Sound. Henderson had moved away quietly, taking Tasha with her. There was no confrontation, only acknowledgement that the truth had its own finality. I went inside, kneeling in the living room to pray. "Lord," I whispered, "thank you for giving me strength when I needed it most. Thank you for letting justice be seen and dignity restored. May those who have wronged us see the light and learn. And may we continue in peace, love, and truth." After prayer, I prepared breakfast for the grandchildren, humming softly as the sun warmed the kitchen. Marcus leaned against the counter, watching. "You know, Ma," he said, "you've shown me how to stand tall no matter what. That's the real legacy." I smiled, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. "Strength, patience, and faith, baby. That's what carries us through life. Always remember that." The day unfolded in calm, comforting ways. We checked in with neighbors, shared tea and stories, and even called a few friends from church to recount the events, now tinged with relief instead of shock. Every conversation reminded me that while the confrontation had been dramatic, life moves forward, and peace is sweeter after storms. In the afternoon, I took a walk in my garden. The roses I had planted years ago bloomed brilliantly, each petal a symbol of endurance. The azaleas waved softly in the breeze. I knelt, tending to the soil, feeling connected to life, to growth, to renewal. Marcus joined me, handing me a trowel. "You've always nurtured this garden like you nurtured us, Ma," he said. I chuckled. "Life needs care, attention, and patience, just like people." Chanel came outside carrying lemonade. "Mama, it's sweet," she said, "just like you." I laughed, taking a sip. Sweet, refreshing, and exactly what I needed after the turmoil. As evening fell, we gathered on the porch together. The sun dipped low, casting golden light over the neighborhood. We watched the grandchildren chase fireflies, the laughter echoing softly into the dusk. Marcus draped an arm over my shoulder. "You did it, Ma. You restored our family, our home, our dignity." "Yes, baby," I replied, leaning back. "And now we live, truly live, in peace." The house, once shadowed by betrayal, now shone with light, love, and restoration. Every meal, every laugh, every quiet moment of prayer felt richer, fuller, more meaningful. That night, as I prepared for bed, I paused at the window, looking out at the stars. The sky was calm, infinite, and serene. I whispered softly, "Respect, patience, endurance, and truth, they always win." Always. And with that, I turned off the lights, feeling peaceful, strong, and whole for the first time in decades. As I sit here on my porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees, I can finally breathe. For decades, I endured betrayal, lies, and deceit. But patience, wisdom, and truth never failed me. Samuel Carter thought he could erase me, steal my home, and humiliate my family. But he forgot one thing: the strength of a woman who has lived, prayed, and fought for her dignity. Life has taught me a lesson I hope you carry with you. Never mistake kindness for weakness, and never allow lies to go unchallenged. Respect your elders, honor truth, and stand firm in the face of betrayal. If this story touched you, like the video and subscribe for more family stories of revenge, justice, and triumph. Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voice and know how far this story has reached, because in the end, justice isn't just a word, it's a way of life.